Welp, Big Bad Toy Store comes to the rescue once again because Hasbro's distribution is still nightmarishly bad. Quick question, do you guys want to see the Creatures Collide box set in a pair of two-parters like last time, or do you want those figures to just be rolled into a Repaints Palooza? Also, by the end of this week, it will be the channel's 2-year anniversary. Insane, I know. So, I'm trying to get as close to 9K as possible in the little time I have left before I age into dust. So, if you enjoyed this video by the end, please consider subscribing. And your likes, please give. And without further ado, it's Legacy Motormaster. Legomaster. You all know I just don't care about the Stunticons, so why is Hasbro trying so hard to make me like them? God damn it, this thing is kind of awesome. First up though, you remember how last time I was really happy with how much MMC respects our space? Yeah, Hasbro doesn't. This is how this figure comes. Look at how much dead space is in this box. You could fit like 3 entire Motormasters in this much area, with the trailers. And yes, the big light box, because this is a big figure. God, the suffering this guy wants to cause me. Starting off in alt mode again, because this is how it comes, and this thing is heavy. It is a dense brick of a box that you could brain someone with and probably kill them. And there's no lined diecast parts in here. It's all just really meaty plastic. And this is why I kind of hate diecast. Diecast figures can be like 1% metal and 99% plastic that will disintegrate if you cough on it, but it will still feel nice and durable. Meanwhile, this thing is heavy because it's made out of 100% robust materials. I hear tale that this thing yellows, which mine has not done yet, and Hasbro really needs to get on whatever's causing that issue in so many of their figures, but so far on a materials front, I'm impressed. Motormaster and his trailer together weigh 749 grams, which means pretty much nothing to me. I don't know grams, but I also don't know how to change the settings on my scale. But that is the exact same weight as the Siege Skyfire with all of his accessories. And I have to say that this is the kind of trailer that Rodimus should have come with rather than the bullshit that he did. Because this is overall 1/3 heavier than the Rodimus with his, and all the extra crap he came with that didn't make him a commander class. So, it's built well, and it comes with an amount of additional stuff that I would say feels like it justifies the commander price point. But it also looks really good. I was a little worried going in that the trailer did seem like it was perhaps a bit too small, and while I will say that may still be true, it doesn't feel like it's a big deal in person. And I was worried that the Menasor abs on the front were going to make this thing look dumb, but in practice it feels like a refrigerator truck, so even that's not a problem. The little stand legs like to fall over, which is a bit annoying, and I will say that I was kind of disheartened by this thing when I first detached the truck and flipped it around in my hands because, this is kind of a blatantly simple transformation. Step 1, bend guy at knees. Step 2, you're done. But I think this might have been just a packaging error with my copy, because you can make this far less distracting by just flipping the head away. There really aren't any complaints I have about this alt mode. It could stand to be a little longer in the trailer, but I find myself not really caring a lot. Wheels are a bit thin, but not a big deal. It's great looking, and it feels even better. Transformation, as much as I may have just criticized it being too simple, has a little more going on than I implied. Mostly just kind of having to deal with the panels forming around the legs in a less than ideal fashion. The sides end up a little knobbly because of it, but for the most part, they still wind up looking pretty cool, despite the faux forming toes. That part's a little lame, but I can forgive this. Motormaster and Menasor are just awful designs. Like, how exactly is Motormaster supposed to have the whole cab become his feet? That would require the main part of his body to actually be the trailer. But if you do that, then you can't use the trailer for the combined mode. So you need a second, bigger trailer for that. And then Motormaster would end up wildly out of scale with everything else. I don't know what the designers were on when they made these losers, but it was some bad stuff. Ultimately, I do like this transformation. It's like a 6 out of 10, maybe a 6.5. Anyways, the end result is Legomaster indeed. This man's shins alone are bigger than his torso. But the interesting thing here is that because they expand so much going down, it kind of helps reduce the feeling that the legs are too long. I'm not sure why, but despite this being one of the most egregious examples of disproportionate legs, this is one of the less noticeable instances. Otherwise, this is a nearly flawless interpretation of Motormaster. Really, the only detail this guy shouldn't have is the weird backpack. This part looks a little unfinished, but honestly I think it almost makes this lame roller skating bastard a little cooler. He's got a little bit of bullshit on his legs, but it's way better than the polyps he had on his shins in the show. Gross, motherfucker, you should get that treated. The last flaw, I'm actually kind of a fan of, and that's that his arms are black and purple on the inside and back. I think that this gives this little loser a bit more pop, as does all the sculpted detail he has. They really went out of their way to make everything about this boring son of a bitch a lot more interesting. From the techno kneecaps to the forearm gas tanks to the giant low-def nipples. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I actually managed to find this dweeb cool looking. Though, no matter how cool looking he may be, he does have one significant problem. This thing loves to fall over. This really needed some ankle tilts. And this guy is another great example of stuff I'm always on about. Ratchets are only good when they're used well, and here, they suck. For some reason, these legs, despite the fact that they are only used for the robot mode's hips and bear no strain in combined mode or alt mode, are some of the most aggressive, though shitty ratchets I've ever experienced. They resist you way too much, they feel bad when using them, and they make it harder to get him into stances that will hold his weight. There is no such thing as an element that by its very nature is positive. Any feature has to be a good use of that feature for it to be a good feature. Speaking of good features, this guy's Muppet-ass face. It's crisp, it's clean, it's the closest I've ever come to liking this dumbass head sculpt. It's pretty much perfect. Love the metallic purple that they used for the face. It's got so much life to it. The purple eyes don't stand out the best against it, but I know this will make some people very happy, because there's a crowd of fans out there who hate the fact that most Decepticons have red eyes, and would like to see more colors get added into the mix for the baddies. I will say that I think it's a little strange how the head is actually a separate piece from the box around it. Makes him look like his mom made him wear his Megatron hat, so he got embarrassed and pulled his hood up over it to hide his shame. It's a great head for the awful head he's supposed to have. I feel like I'm caught in a time loop, because that's like the third time I've said that exact phrase in as many reviews. Is Hasbro just on a conquering the Uggos phase? So this is the best I've ever liked the design of Motormaster, one of the most legendarily stupid-looking G1 characters. I still don't get why this team has a fan club, but I get it at least a little better now. For accessories, he comes with a trailer, a sword, and a really bad gun that you have to disassemble the trailer to get. Seriously? I know this is the top of the box, so it has to be smooth, but you couldn't have the peg flip around to the bottom so the sculpting wound up being the part that you saw, and not this garbage? And technically, you can turn this into a base mode, but I'm gonna be honest, this is total bullshit. Like, what the fuck is this even supposed to be other than a thing in front of your face? And you may say that it's not intended to be used here. And then my question is, where the hell is it supposed to be used then? Because if it's not for gun mode, and it's not for base mode, and it's not for alt mode, then why is it hinged here at all? I mean, good on them for trying, but fuck this thing. Oh, and this sword looks like shit too. It's a little too big for Motormaster and way too small for Menasor, and it just looks bad. So accessories kind of suck. The best thing he has is his trailer, which is basically just a box. Otherwise, he's got a crappy gun and a crappy sword, and I can't tell which is crappier. Poseability, however, is not crappy. Head only swivels. That is crappy. Shoulders pull a strong 90, and you can cheat them for 180. Ugly and fake forwards butterfly. Elbows pull what seems like an 89. Wrist swivel, and you can fake it for a good sword-wielding wrist. Hips are completely unimpeded in all directions, way more than 90 knees, and feet with an ankle tilt. So in poseability, this is ahead of the curve. The head is behind the times, and the elbows could stand to be a lot better, as could the feet, but everything else is the best kind of average, or well above average with some specialty joints. Now in the last video, I actually got asked by someone how I figure out transformations without ever looking at the instructions, and a large amount of that just comes down to experience. A lot of design elements get used again and again between figures, but some of it just boils down to keeping track of where the pegs and ports are, because if you can figure out what those are for, then you can figure out where things need to go. I bring it up because this guy is not exactly the clearest in where everything needs to wind up, and I did have to look at the directions to figure out one step. And you're gonna laugh when I point out what that step was. But overall, this is a pretty fun and cool conversion where partway through you wind up with the ultimate goblin! I swear if you look in the instructions, this phase is pretty much just in there as is. They know what they did. It's overall more complex than pretty much anything Combiner Wars had to offer, including their Devastator, and it's got a really premium quality to it, without it being overly complicated. Interestingly, it uses Combiner Wars style ports for the lower legs, so if you want, you can actually use any CW Deluxe to finish off his shins. So if you have, say, Prime Wars Wild Rider and Breakdown, you can make a version of this without the damn cars on the backs of the legs for no fucking reason. However, the official pegs for this set do seem slightly smaller front to back, so the old ones don't retain quite as well. And the arms are really smart, but those are not attached the same way, so you can't use any CW limbs for those. I'm also going to show you this with the drag strip on it because why the hell not? It's not like you can't already find pictures of it everywhere on the internet, so it won't be a big reveal. Making me question why this came out now rather than at the end of Legacy when all the other figures were ready to attach to it. And lastly, the step that I had to look up the directions for. Pegging the wrists into the backpack. I just had the arms going down the back like this and I knew that was wrong, but it was just so inconsequential I just couldn't figure out what it wanted from me. And here we have Menasor's stupid combined mode that is not a combined mode. This is a dude by himself. The other guys aren't part of him. At best, they're decorations. This was such a fucking terrible idea, and I talked with a fan a while back who made me kind of like it. To be clear, it's still awful, I still hate it, but that fan had a cool idea. Sorry, I'm forgetting who you were who told me this, but their interpretation is that all the other combiners were built from the ground up as teams to be a combiner, whereas Menasor was a bunch of pre-existing dudes. So in order to turn them into kind of an aftermarket combiner, they created a trailer that did most of the work combining for them. In a way, I guess it would be similar to Transtectors, so he's almost kind of a fake combiner. It's more 5 dudes being the power source for a separate robot. It can't make this design cool to me, but it does make it make sense, and it's a cool explanation, which is how I like to think of this now. And yeah, this is a really good damn rendition of this stupid mode. It likes to lean forward because the ankles have no tilt down, which it really needs. It's rather frustrating to get this guy to stand right. And the head looks rock-sucking stupid with the horns straight up. Like, yeah, that just ruins it. It looks better without them at all than it does with them straight up. But if you have them angled back one click, then that's where this thing looks its best. Obviously, right now, this is incomplete. It's full of gaps and vacant pegs, holes that shouldn't be there, so we can't fully judge this thing on how it looks right now, but I can say that it's shaping up well. It's about a head taller than Siege Skyfire, so it's good and big, putting this at a larger scale than any of the Scramble City CW figures. I question why the shins have these gaps, though. I know that they get filled when the cars get added onto the shins, but the simple fact of the matter is that these didn't have to be here at all. They seem like an action gimmick that is either here just to be there for the sake of gimmicks for the price points, or more insidiously, they're here to force you to buy the last 2 figures in the set. Cause with them being the backs of the legs and therefore hidden, I think a lot of people would have said, well, the Legbots with their giant backpacks, I'm assuming that Breakdown is going to be a retool of the Wild Rider, but with the Legbots looking so bad, do I really need those last 2? Well, now motherfucker with these holes in the shins, yes you do! Though, if that were the case, I cannot fathom why they didn't just put the cars on the fronts of the shins, where, they should go. The torso could stand to have a little extra paint, and the fists are pretty lame, just being these giant stationary cubes. I mean, somewhere the price point had to give. It's just too bad that these couldn't get a better sculpt, even if they still had to be solid. Like, what is with these giant thumbs? But overall, this is obviously going to be the best Chug Menasor ever released. If we are talking looks alone, there is no question this will be the best. And it might even be better than some third-party offerings, but we will have to see when this is finished. In the meantime, this also poses great for a combiner. Head swivels, and you can cheat it for a lot of up, but this is a combiner, so who's he looking up at? Shoulders pull a good bit more than a 90, which almost no combiner can do. Normal 90 elbows, would have loved to see more here. Ratcheted wrist swivels, weird. Waist swivel, not all combiners get this. Completely unimpeded hips with better ratchets than just the Motormaster, being both stronger and having dozens of times the number of detents, allowing for more options with where you leave them. Knees pull a degree or two more than a 90, and ankle tilt with toe up, that only works so long as the doors are open, so when this is finished, that bit of articulation will be gone. So that's extremely solid posing for a combiner. It's not the best ever for one of these, that still probably goes to MMC's stuff, but it's not suffering any real deficiencies. This is pretty standard posability for a normal figure nowadays, and that's really good for a combiner, which is usually lacking. And look, I can't believe I'm saying this, but this is a great figure. It is easily embodying what Commander class was meant to be the most after its introduction. Skylinks was great, but a little simple, and it was flawed in its build, having some real issues holding together in several locations. And Rodimus still just is not a Commander class, just not even close. It's a good figure, but it's a good Leader Plus figure. It does not pass the muster to be a Commander. 60 to 65 is the price that Rodimus is worth. This, however, fully justifies itself. This is a more complete experience on its own than the Titan class arc, and it will only get better as you complete the set. Menasor is still the worst combiner. He has got a stupid as hell design, but this figure still finds a way to rock. This is a micro masterpiece. Do not pass it up if you can avoid doing so. Now, where's my legacy Bruticus, Hasbro? And that's not half what I have to say, but it's enough what I have to say. And I know, you know, what everyone else tells you to do at the end of these videos. So, if you liked what you saw here, please do that. And if you'd like to take it a step further, then please, share this video with any friend you think may be interested. I hope you all enjoyed listening to me waste your time.